In our previous lecture, we talked about neutron stars. So a star bigger than 8 solar masses, initially, the core reaches the Chandrasekhar limit and it swells and collapses and blows away the outer parts of the star. You get a supernova explosion. The bigger the initial mass of the star, the bigger the neutron star that's going to be left. Most of them are a solar mass or so. But as you get bigger stars, the neutron star gets bigger. So a 12 solar mass star leaves a bigger neutron star maybe than an 8 solar mass star. A 20 solar mass star leaves an even bigger one. A 50 solar mass star would leave an even bigger one. A 100 solar mass star exploding would leave an even bigger one. Well, sort of. The problem is there is a maximum size limit or mass limit to a neutron star. Once you reach that maximum mass limit, the neutron star collapses. And so it collapses further. Now remember, we talked about the maximum mass that a white dwarf can have, the Chandrasekhar limit, 1.4 solar masses. Once you get beyond that point, then the degenerate neutron pressure can't hold up the star and it collapses. And so the next question would be, well, what happens, if you get more than the maximum mass of the neutron star? And the degenerate electron pressure held up a white dwarf, but you get beyond the Chandrasekhar limit, it collapses, and then the neutrons actually push against each other, and so you have like neutron pressure that holds up a neutron star. But at some point you can get beyond that, and then you collapse even further. So the question is, what's the next step here of the collapse? Well, the neutrons and the protons themselves are made up of smaller particles that we call quarks. And so the quarks really don't take up any space. They're bouncing around inside here. You have 3 quarks in each of a proton or a neutron. One of them has an up, and a down quark, and the other has an up, down, and a down quark. And so the quarks are bouncing around. There's these other particles called gluons that go back and forth and hold them. There's mesons that are formed in here, moving back and forth between protons and neutrons, which are quark and antiquark pairs. All this stuff is happening at the subatomic level. Particles coming and going, coming into existence, coming out of existence. Even the quarks themselves are fluctuating between what they are. And so they're all fluctuating in there. And so this becomes a very complicated sort of situation. Well, the quarks themselves don't weigh nearly as much. Even 3 of them don't weigh nearly as much as a proton or a neutron. And much of the mass is made up of energy. Remember, E equals mc squared, so E is going to be equal to c squared over m. And so, or the m is going to be c squared over E. And so there'd be some mass that's really the energy. E over c squared. Sorry about that. Okay, so the mass is really related to the energy that's in there. And so if you squeeze everything together, that takes so much energy, that energy exceeds the mass of the things that are in there, and then you start getting rid of the individual particles, and you are squeezing them together. So the question is, how far can you squeeze quarks together? Well, they don't actually take up any space. And so you can squeeze everything down to a single point. In mathematics, we'd call that a singularity. Now, what's a singularity? Let me explain this whole idea of a singularity. In mathematics, there are some equations. So you have like y equals 1 over x. So if x is equal to 2, then y is equal to 1/2. If x is equal to 3, then y is 1/3. If x is 0.1, 1 divided by 0.1 is 10. What if x is 0? Well, that equation becomes undefined. And so you can define it for everything except for that one situation. In math, we'd say that x equals 0 is a singularity for that equation. Well, imagine another equation. So y equals 1 divided by 2 minus x. Okay, well, again, if x equals 0, that's 1/2. If x equals 1, then that's y equals 1. If x equals 3, then y is equal to -1. If x equals 4, then y equals minus 1/2. If x equals 2, this equation is not defined. So it's defined for everything except for that one point. So that one point is a singularity. So we would say x equals 2 is the singularity of that equation, x equals 0 is the singularity of that equation. Well, if you squeeze everything down to 0 size, that's a singularity in physics because we have a lot of gravitational equations or other kind of equations. You know, we have, for example, we have an equation for gravitational potential energy. The gravitational potential energy equation is related to, for example, is related to 1 over r. Well, if r is 0, that's a singularity. We have the force equations, and so force between particles, you know, divide 1 over r squared. If r is 0, that's a singularity. And we have many other equations, even density equation. Density is mass divided by volume, but if volume is 0, that's a singularity. And likewise, gravitational potential energy G_m over r. Okay, that's a singularity. Also, if r is 0. So what happens is you reach this point and these equations are no longer valid for describing how things work. Now that's a bad thing, because if the equations of physics aren't valid, that means all the other things that physics describes aren't valid. Causality, how things work, none of that applies to that singularity right there. And so that's a bad thing. And so, but you know, what does this mean? What does it mean to have a singularity? What does it happen if everything shrinks down to no size? It still has mass, but it has no size, so no volume. So what physically does that suggest? Well, the other problem you run into is escape velocity. Escape velocity goes as square root 2gm over r. If r is equal to 0, you have infinite escape velocity. We can't have infinite escape velocity. Well, Feldman Carl Schwarzschild worked out the mathematics of this, and he said, well, let's take the escape velocity equation, solve for the escape velocity if it's equal to the speed of light. Because he has suggested what would happen is that speed of light is going to be an absolute sort of thing. And we'll talk about why that is the case in a little bit. So nothing can go faster than light to get away from it. Again, all this non-causality stuff, basically that would result in breakdown of the universe if you have non-causality anywhere in the universe. And so that would be bad. I mean, the universe basically had this wave of ceasing to exist occurring. And so, but he says, now wait a minute, if I set the escape velocity here equal to c and then do some algebra, the magic radius is now something that's not equal to 0. Now the magic radius here is going to be something that's equal to 2gm over c squared. 2 is a constant, g is the universal gravitation, mass. That's the m is the mass of the thing, and then c is the speed of light. So those are all constants. So that's a finite number. So we call this the Schwarzschild radius. So the Schwarzschild radius gives us the distance at which you would have to be from something in order to escape minimally, at least for light, because light can't go faster than the speed of light. So he reasons that anything that's in this realm of non-causality, like end of the universe stuff, would have to be very close to the singularity, but the Schwarzschild radius is farther out. So that means that you can't go faster than light, so all this non-causality does not propagate across the universe and destroy everything. Well, that's good. So Carl Schwarzschild works all this out. Now, unfortunately, during World War I, when he lived, he was serving as a soldier in the front lines, and he was working out the mathematics of all this, and then not too terribly long after he worked out the mathematics and wrote a paper to submit for publication describing this, then he was killed in combat. So this gives an idea of what we would generically call a black hole. something closer than that Schwarzschild radius, anything happening there can't get away, and so that would be a definition of a black hole. Now, this is a classical definition of it, but it turns out it's way more complicated than that. Even what I just gave you in terms of the Schwarzschild radius, the mathematics he did was a little more complicated than what I just told you. But the Schwarzschild radius gives an estimate of what we would call the radius of the black hole. If you're closer to the Schwarzschild radius, then nothing, not even light, can get away because the gravity is so great that the escape velocity is greater than the speed of light.